Hey, welcome back to the channel. I hope you all enjoyed this week's theme of favorite EPs. As I've started to do recently, I figure we'll do some theme thoughts, but it's not really a subjective one this week. It's not like I had certain expectations that were or weren't met. If a song appears on an EP, it was eligible. So I do want to give my thoughts about EPs in general, a couple of EP recommendations, and at the very end, a little bit of an update for the channel. First of all, I'm a big fan of EPs, which is going to sound really weird in a little bit. But they're sort of like the novella or short films of music. It's a way to get some art out in a format that isn't quite so long. Maybe you have an idea that the concept acts absolutely works for 15 or 20 minutes, but either you don't have enough material to fulfill this theme along a larger time frame, or maybe it just doesn't work when expanded past that. You understand that after 15 minutes, whatever gimmick or shtick you have going on, it's going to get old. So the EP is a really great way to release razor honed, concise ideas. And I don't think they get the appreciation that they should. We celebrate short films in award ceremonies. You know, best short film of the year. We specifically notice that this is a format that is worth bringing to the public eye and appreciating. Novellas, I feel, don't necessarily get that same attention, and EPs kind of get wrapped up in that same area. There's some publications that do highlight EPs and others that don't, focusing primarily on the LPs. I just I think they're great. But I'm also a fan of short form, concise ideas as well. Um, just to shift gears for a second, even when it comes to video games, I'm usually a bigger fan of a nice 3 hour razor honed idea than an 80-hour epic that is kind of sloppy everywhere because it doesn't know what it wants to do. I think there's something about having an idea in mind and executing it at the highest level, and if that only ends up being 15 minutes of art, then it's 15 minutes of art. It's still fantastic. So I love the concept of EPs, but I've realized I don't really listen to many. I wanted to take this moment to highlight some songs I would have suggested for this week's theme, and honestly, this is probably one of those moments I'm like, I'm glad I'm on this end of the equation, reacting to what people tell me to rather than giving suggestions because I don't listen to many. But I did see one back when I was a broke teen and I found my music in Kazaa and Morpheus. I got this album called Bullet for My Valentine's The Poison, their debut album. And there was a track on it that I absolutely loved. It's probably my favorite of the album. And so later on, when I ended up buying the deluxe edition of The Poison, you have to understand that I was both very confused and a bit heartbroken that this track didn't appear on here as track 8 after all these things I hate revolve around you, where I had understood this track to be for my entire experience with the album. I did some digging and found out that it actually comes off of an EP called Hand of Blood. And yeah, this jewel case is pretty old and broken. But it's the title track, Hand of Blood. And I loved this track so much. So I listened to it again just prior to making this video so I could say a little bit about it. And it's okay. It's weird how music doesn't age with you sometimes. Some music is timeless. You'll be able to listen to it forever, and others very clearly showcase a specific point of your time and who you were then. And I think this is one of those songs. It's fine. And there is one part that's very cool. The transition from the end of the verse into the chorus has the lead singer going from a full clean to a full fry with a gradual transition. There, it's kind of like a crossfade, but as far as I can tell, it's all natural. None of it's being done in production. Literally crossfades a clean to a harsh, and there's a moment where in the middle it's a full clean and a full harsh overlap together. It's just a really cool moment. And there's also what I love about the band, which is the multiple vocalists. Both the bassist and the second guitarist do harshes, the lead does cleans and harshes, and they do a lot of overlapping cleans and harshes. They do call and response, we get different kinds of harshes and stuff like that. So I love all of that, but the song itself is kind of iterative. This was probably my first foray into heavier metals, which is why it was such an important part of my growing up. But it just doesn't quite hit me today. But if you enjoy what I called metalcore, but I guess it's quasi deathcore light, melodic deathcore, maybe, it might be worth checking out. It might end up being a bit too light if you're into any of that, but it's a decent song. And I almost ended the video on that note, which isn't a great way to end it. Not very good for Bryan Recommends. And that's when I glanced over at my library and saw Jinjer's Micro. This was the first album review I did on the channel. I'm not going to particularly recommend anyone watch it. It's certainly quite short. I mean, it's not a long album to begin with, but I don't think I had a lot of thoughts on it. And overall, I mean, as the first time most people do anything, it's a bit rough around the edges as far as a review goes. But I do enjoy every track on here. This is a solid EP, and I think it's a very interesting time in Jinjer's career as well, because they had just come off of King of Everything. They had just switched drummers. This one had their old drummer on it. And they had just released a viral video called Pisces Live Session. So they went from a small band to a band that pretty much everybody in the reaction circles were aware of by now. And this was their first release post virality. And on here we have Teacher Teacher, which again was another highly reacted to track, and the single Ape, which was their debut single and is just it is a massive track from the perspective of chaos, just lots of weird time signatures. It's brutal, it's heavy. It is a good song. But my favorite off this track would probably be Perennial, which I think was probably their major shift away from being that metally, genty, chuggy kind of band to something a bit more melodic and atmospheric. Yeah, looking at King of Everything, I Speak Astronomy and Pisces would probably be their most melodic tracks, and Perennial blows both of those out of the water. And even looking at Macro, which was the LP they released after Micro, there's a lot of songs on here that sort of walk the line between both sides. Yeah, this was a moment where they began to shift, and it was Micro. And Perennial's just a fantastic track. It has its moments of weight, but I actually think the clean vocals outweigh the harsh vocals on this one. And the entire bridge is just gorgeous. And it's a song about rebirth, which I think is pretty interesting because the band, I think at this point in time, were going through a metamorphosis of their own and coming out the other side born again, possibly. The Jinjer after Micro, or I guess technically the Jinjer after King of Everything, is very different from before that. Especially not even just King of Everything, but looking back to Cloud Factory and even Inhale Don't Breathe, which has a bit more of a metalcore, post-hardcore side to it. I feel like Jinjer defined themselves on Micro. They said, we know who we were, and we're going to give you some of that with Ape and Teacher Teacher, but we know where we want to go. And everything after Micro has incorporated more melodic elements. I don't know how this came into a big review of the album itself, though. I just go listen to Perennial. It is a fantastic track. I love it. It has nice balance between weighty, heavy metal stuff and atmospheric, melodic stuff. And it's just a gorgeous song with great lyrical themes too. So yeah, I guess those would be. I mean, that's my big recommendation. Hand of Blood is a good track from Bullet, but I don't know that I would necessarily recommend it today. And I don't know that people who listen to that type of music would even be interested in it now. It kind of feels dated to me, but I don't know. If that interested you, go check it out. I did say there'd be a little bit of an update here. The schedule is going to get played around with. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but having a whole week of non-themed selections I don't think is working. You may have noticed 2 weeks ago on Monday for Bryan's choice, I picked one track and I did a special selection for the second. The Monday coming up in a couple days will be no different. Honestly, the number of tracks that I want to check out in isolation is basically non-existent. I'm an album dude. I don't really listen to playlists. I don't listen to isolated tracks. I want full experiences in my own time, and that kind of bleeds over into this. If you ask me what I want to do for the channel, the answer is an album. Now, I can't release 3, 4, 5 album reviews a week, but that is what I would do. I don't really have an interest in listening to a single track. That feels like a spoiler to me. If I have a choice, I'm not going to spoil myself on a larger work. So it's nice to have those slots when something does come out, a new single for a band I'm interested in, like when Hail the Sun or Periphery dropped new music. I liked having the ability, or I would have liked the ability to do this rather than having to do a bonus Saturday video. The same kind of goes for New Music Fridays, which is kind of hit and miss. It was really nice to have that slot open when Tesseract released War of Being, but otherwise, it's not necessarily a day that does very well with the metrics. Those videos don't tend to get a lot of views. They don't create interesting discussion too often in the comment section. Again, it's kind of hit and miss depending on the band. Um, I don't know that my analyses are really great on them either because they tend to be more mainstream style bands, which tend to fit more into a specific mold than some of the more eclectic or extreme or progressive stuff that tends to get requested to me. So, again, it's nice to have the slot when I need it, but I don't always need it. And on top of that, sounds from my inbox is reaching a point of finishing more requests than are coming in. I think next week I won't have enough songs to make a full video for, which means that that's probably going to become a once a month thing rather than a twice a month thing. And that's going to be another open day. So I'm not sure what's going to be done. When you see the special selection show up on Monday again, and you're like, dude, he's supposed to be picking, stuff that interests him. That's why. And the non-themed weeks are becoming a bit cumbersome for me trying to fill them in. I think the comment request is easily the easiest day for me to do, especially once the emails start. Once I catch up to them, I won't even be able to do one for that. I'll have to find another way to, I don't know, solicit smaller bands to be featured. I'll have to go search out smaller bands, I guess. Um, it just doesn't seem like it's working. So I will be exploring new routes. We're going to be playing around with the schedule and stuff like that. It may be just a rotating couple of free slots every week that could be used for comment requests or something that's caught my attention or a new track that I think people are interested in. Um, More so than dedicating a day to each of these topics. But we'll see how all that goes. Um, yeah, that's that then, I guess. A couple of EPs to check out to add on as an addendum to the week and a little insight into the future of the channel. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of everything, not just the music you listen to, but all the art, all the media you take in. It's always important to kind of analyze everything. Make sure you're getting the right message or ideas or knowledge out of everything that goes into your brain. All right. I'll catch you guys next time. We got the album review. We got 2 album reviews tonight, and then the live stream in the morning for anyone who can make that. Catch you guys later.